Hello, my little fashionistas. Today's interview is with a model Magic the Gathering player, who also happens to be a model for Magic the Gathering. He was Yawgmoth, Ral, and the corset-clad Rakdos Shaman. Va-va-va-voom! So, let me introduce Jonothan Reed.
So, my first question to you is, uh, when did you first start playing Magic? Because I believe you are a Magic fan, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I got cards everywhere. Just packs and stuff lying all over my desk, like underneath my desk. Yeah. Um, so I would say eighth grade. So I'm 33 now. So that was like 2000, like 2000, 2001, something like that. Um, I used to be on the chess club, and whenever you go to these tournaments and stuff, in between rounds, I mean, there's a long period of time between rounds because some guys take forever to play a game, some guys are really fast, and the group of us that played on that team would play Magic in between the rounds, and so I learned to play back when like Onslaught, that set was brand new, so that was like the first time I had ever sat down and played Magic. So it's
And
been a long time.
and how old were you then when you got involved with doing artwork as well?
So back then I was doing art then, drawing, doodling, that kind of thing. I sucked at it. I had actually like failed art when I would like art class when I was in seventh or eighth grade, something like
What?
that. Yeah, so I was too bored with it. So you know how when you first start, they really want you to focus on like the fundamentals, like draw this ball, draw this cone, and it's it covers a lot of different mediums. So like there's graphite, there's charcoal, there's sculpting, there's craftsmanship, and a lot of it was just really boring and bland to me. And I really just wanted to draw like dragons and warriors and sorcerers, like the stuff I was that I saw on the card art or on TV. And I didn't realize then that the fundamentals played like a massive role in that. I thought it was just like, oh, this is what you do if you want to do fine art, not if you want to do like sword and sorcery.
One would almost assume that there should be some sort of teacher in the class to teach you those things, though. You
Yeah,
know?
and he was a really good teacher. I mean, the dude was
Oh,
brilliant. He was he knew that I wasn't getting it, and I think he knew that if I wanted to take it serious one day, that I would look back on this and that I would realize like where my fault was. He he was actually my mom's art teacher. Also, it's kind of funny. It's kind
did
of like
he did
the family art teacher.
did he give? How did that work out? I mean, was he like?
Well, he was like, I can't believe that she gave birth to this idiot.
Oh my
But
goodness!
no, no. I mean, he's a really cool guy, and he got like you could join the art club also, and we would do like Ren Fair trips. So that was a really fun part of it. That's when like he and I really connected. He really tried to like teach me that if because I was really passionate about art, I just didn't like doing still life drawings. And I think he knew that if one day this would be something for me, that I would really need to focus on those things that I wasn't focusing on. So he tried to like he had these I can't remember any of them, but he always had these like little sayings that he had, and I don't remember what they are, but I remember that it affected me then. That like in the future, I would look back then like on my like shortcomings then, and I would make up for it in some way. So fast forward way into the future when I picked art back up. That was the first thing I did was I just like buckled down and for like 2 years I did nothing but study like fundamentals and stuff.
And you took on you were mentored by Darkin. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was the first one who really took me under his wing. When I started doing so like when I had got back into art and I quit like putting so much emphasis on the fundamentals, which I mean I still do today. Every artist has to practice the fundamentals no matter what skill level you are. I reached out to a couple of artists, like Cynthia Shepherd, Darkin, and he was just starting up a mentorship at the time, and I took his intro to digital art class, and it's kind of like it was really focused around how to take your already basic understanding of the fundamentals and digital art and turn it into a career basically, and then from there you can take it as like advanced class, which is more like focused around fantasy, sci-fi, more like in-depth anatomy, things like that, like the image you see behind you, how to create something like that versus just drawing like a still life in a really fancy pretty way.
And so, and when you say reached out to them, do you mean you just contacted them, or how did you reach out to Cynthia Shepherd? I mean,
So
it's interesting.
Cynthia, yeah, Cynthia, I just messaged her. I don't want to say I just like slid in her DMs or anything, but like I just messaged her. I was like, hey, I was in Germany at the time, and I was like, hey, I've got this piece that I'm working on, and I'd really like to get another set of eyes on it. Do you think you could take a look at it for me? And she was totally open to doing it. She wasn't an art director at WotC at the time. She was still working freelance and living in Virginia. And so, I don't know if she just had like a ton of time to do it or not, but she like graciously responded and gave me feedback. And then after that, she was going to be at one of do you remember Spectrum, like when they did the live events?
I mean, yeah, I wasn't playing back then, but I've read about it.
So that's like it's a live showcase for artists of all skill levels. It's kind of like a convention. There's a book that gets published, and it's supposed to be a book that displays premier artists for science fiction and fantasy, and they do like awards and stuff like that. It's like our own little Oscars, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so they used to do a live event in Kansas City, and I'm from that area. So when I was coming back to America, she was getting ready to go do that show, and I had already signed up to go to it. And she's like, hey, do you just want to like connect while we're there? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she introduced me to a lot of other artists at the time. That's how I met. I mean, I doubt they remember me, but I met Donato, Ian McKegg,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Miller. I mean, like the list goes on. I met a lot of people out there, and I didn't meet Darkin though, but she knew who Darkin. She knows who he is, and she's like, "Hey, you should just message him and like try to take his class if he has a class or something like that." And so that's when I reached out to him, and after the class that I took with him, he continued to like mentor me afterwards. Like I'd be working on like a personal piece, and I would just message him on like Facebook or something and be like, hey, what do you think? And he'd give me pointers and stuff, and he'd be pointing back to things in classes and stuff like that.
What would be like an example of a pointer that he'd give you for your own personal work?
Well, I'd send him a piece and he'd say, it sucks, don't suck, John. No, no, but no, he would be like color stuff. Like I'm colorblind. I'm red green colorblind.
Oh, okay.
And so like sometimes I would goof somewhere in the image, like there'd be green where I didn't want it to be, and he would just kind of like point that out. And he taught me a little trick with like the slider and stuff. He's like, just stay away from like this area of the slider and you won't have any problems. Like the hue slider or the color wheel, whatever artists use. But yeah, he's like, just stay away from that area and you'll be fine.
It's yeah, it's crazy. I also read that Victor, or not read, but yeah, I guess I did read. I didn't talk about it in the interview. I wanted to. I meant to. Victor Adame Minguez is actually also colorblind too. So it's interesting to hear about colorblind artists. One would assume that would hinder you pretty heavily. But how did you discover that? I mean, did you just take the regular tests, or like where you look for the numbers?
Well, I was in the military, and when I went to MEPS to sign up, they do like this really long physical. It takes like sometimes it takes like 2-3 days to get through. And one of them is a color vision test. And I was initially going in to be EOD, which is in the Marine Corps. It's Explosive Ordnance Division. So they deal with like bombs and wiring and stuff like that. And so they were like, well, you're going to need to pass this test. And I failed it miserably. And they were like, "Did you know you were colorblind?" And I didn't know. I thought I was just a dummy when it came to color. Like sometimes I'd be like, "Oh, that's a blue," and people would be like, "Well, John, that's a purple," or I'd be like, "That's a nice green color," and they're like, "Well, that's orange."
Wow, that's interesting. And it's you could go. Yeah, I mean, how old were you when that was happening? I imagine you were in your 20s when you found out.
18. Yeah.
18. Okay.
Yeah. I went in right after high school. So yeah, they found out I was colorblind, and they do a bunch of different tests. Like they do like the color flip book, and they try to get you to see the number in the colors.
Yeah,
Some of them I just couldn't see, and people are like, "You serious? You can't see that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can't see it." And then they do this little dot test. It's like white, pink, and red, and you go at a certain distance, and they turn on the light. It's like a pinpoint light, and they ask you what color it is, and I couldn't tell the difference, and so yeah, that's how I found out, and I had to change my job in the military because of it.
oh, that must have been tough, I guess, because you kind of probably were really interested in going into what you wanted to do. And so, what did you end up doing?
Infantry. So I wanted to initially go in and be a grunt, but like at the time we were at the height of our conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan, and
Hmm.
so everybody was going into the infantry, so they didn't have a lot of spaces for that, and so they were like, you're why don't you just go EOD or something? It's kind of the same thing. I was like, sure, why not? But whenever they found out I couldn't go into that, they were like, okay, you're gonna go be a grunt. I mean, there's that basically severed my ability to get into a lot of jobs in the military because of my uh, color vision deficiency.
That sucks. Do you have? I heard they have like new glasses now that you can wear that correct it. Like, is that?
Yeah, there are, but they're like sunglasses. They're not clear vision, like or a
Uh,
clear lens. So like all the ones I've tried on, they work, but it's like sitting at the computer with a pair of shades on, and like you have to
that's
blow out the brightness to be able to balance everything.
yeah. That kind of. Well, I think they'll probably get there. I'd imagine. Hopefully, pretty soon. I mean,
Yeah,
they're good with that kind of stuff. I think.
yeah. I think it's caused by some issue with like the cones in your eye. I mean, I'm pretty sure like I'll be old and dusty by the time they come out with some sort of laser surgery for it. It won't
Uh,
matter anymore.
well, that's a way to that's a can do attitude if I've ever heard one. I'm kidding. But so describe then the first time that, and how did you get approached to model for, and who was the first person who asked you to do it?
So I was already modeling at the time. When I got out of the military and started going to college, I was a personal trainer.
Hmm.
And one of the best ways to market yourself as a personal trainer is take your shirt off and take some pictures, right? Like, hey, you can have a body like me, right? And
Hmm.
so I got into fitness modeling, and that kind of snowballed into other forms of modeling like fashion and commercial modeling. And when I met Cynthia, she had a boatload of projects that she had to do for Magic, and a couple of them had male characters, and she had male friends that she used to use for modeling, but none that had like that warrior physique or had a particular look that she was trying to achieve in the painting. And so she asked me, I think it was she did a cover for Imagine Effects, and she was doing like an Athena painting, and in the background she wanted to put these Greek statues. So I was like a couple of opposed as some of the Greek statues in the background, and
Interesting.
then from there it was like, hey, do you want to be on a Magic card? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not,
I,
and then
I mean, as
yeah.
a fan, you must have been like, I mean, maybe you're hiding your excitement a little and being like, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, that's cool. Who am I gonna be? And she didn't know, and a lot of the times they don't know unless it's like a planeswalker. So I think it was Amperin Tactician was the first one I was on, but there was a couple in that set that I was on. But after that, then it was like Darkin needed someone to model real fast because he was doing a really complicated perspective on a human figure. Uh,
Which one
and
was that one that he needed?
I don't remember. I remember I had to put like a table up against the wall and lay against it,
It
and
was
I
for
had to make
Innistrad?
Yeah, I was getting electrocuted, or a soul separator.
Soul
That's what it was.
separator. That's what I thought it
Yeah,
might have been. And
yeah,
yeah,
and then I was the zombie token that was produced from that too.
yeah. I noticed that. I mean, it's crazy how many that you ended up being within a like a span of time. You were like on like 8 pieces, I think, something around that.
Yeah, I think all the ones I've been on have come out already, but yeah, it was just kind of like one right after the other. It was really cool. And then I met Mark and Sarah Winters, and they moved to Kansas for a short amount of time. And while they were there, I modeled a lot of cards. Like that one behind you is one of Sarah's pieces. That was probably the funniest one I've ever done because she was like, "Here, put this leather around your body like a corset, and then
Right.
pretend like you're juggling." I was like, "Okay."
I hope that there is some sort of I mean, there's got to be photographs available of it. I mean, just for posterity's sake, you should share them. But
I think I have a couple, maybe a selfie I took where I'm wearing that. But they would have most of the behind the scenes photos. I'd have to hit them up for them because I'm sure they're pretty funny. Some of the things I had to do.
yeah, it's great. So and then you also from what I'm looking at, you are also were a planeswalker as well. Now,
Yeah, Ral Zarek.
did you get
Yeah.
dressed up as Ral, or did you have the hair? How do they do that?
No, that was actually for some key art, some marketing stuff. So like I was on a booster
Yeah, you were a
box
booster.
wrapper. I
You
was
were
on a
booster
banner.
packs. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another Rakdos one that I was on.
Yeah, you wrote Rakdos key art, and then I kept looking up, and I got confused. And I like typed, I looked up Rakdos key art, and then it was key rune that I saw, and it's just a pole, and I'm like, like a key, and I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
really see how he's in that shot. And then I
No,
realized what I
it's
was looking up.
yeah. The other one that I'm on is kind of like he's wearing a mask like I'm wearing in that background photo, but it's like from the top down, and he's got a whip in his hand. I'd have to find it and show it to you.
I think I know which one it was, but I'm forgetting the name of it. But it's another like circus act kind of scene.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it will be posted up by the time we get this done. What we're talking about, everything will be on screen, so that's
Oh,
good.
okay, cool.
So and then the last one that you did was Yawgmoth, I
hmm
believe. Now that one was like when you pose for that. I mean, are you outfitted up, or do you just like stand there and just pose as the characters? I mean, because I've noticed sometimes there are costumes and sometimes there aren't.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what the artist needs. Like I did some work for Sarah, and she was doing photos for a calendar. I think it's called Levelin or something like that. Anyway, it's like an astrological calendar, and I was Sagittarius in it, and I had like I look like I'm drawing back a bow, and she had me dressed up in a bunch of different pieces for that. Not because I was wearing it in the picture, but I think because she wanted material information and lighting.
Mhm.
So sometimes that happens, but for like Yawgmoth, I was in like just pants, boots. I had longer hair at the time, and so that kind of like lent itself to the image. I don't think I knew I was going to be Yawgmoth. Actually, I remember Mark was telling me that I was going to be a pretty important character, but I don't think he told me until I saw the card. Um,
Yeah, probably for non-disclosure, they probably can't even say that so and so is going to be on a card until the time it's released, right? It's like they
Yeah, I
keep
mean
that under lock and key.
sometimes they do because they like like for the character in the background that you have, like they were like, hey, you're gonna be this like Rakdos carnival guy. And so you need to have like this kind of energy that lends itself to that color pie. But for something like Yawgmoth, the pose was simple, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a
And
Shakespearean kind of look.
yeah, and I believe it's the first time Yawgmoth the character has ever been depicted on a card.
It is.
So I think he wanted to surprise me with it. Otherwise, he would have just told me, like, hey, you're gonna be this guy. Like if they tell me, like if they say you're gonna be a character, but they don't tell me that I'm gonna be Jace, I'm losing something there because I know the mannerisms of Jace. I've seen him depicted before. I know like how I can model that character. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to be some like generic troop or something, and maybe I'm not as emotive with my expression or something, or the way that I'm generating energy in the reference photo for them to use. So,
which one of the pieces do you think looks most like you?
Yawgmoth, probably. Yawgmoth, and there's one Sarah did where my head is being blown out by a magic spell.
Thought collapse.
Yeah,
Yep.
those look a lot like me. The one behind you looks a lot like me, and Amperin Tactician does mostly. But I think of all of them, the one that is like unmistakably me, and my friends give me crap for this all the time, is Yawgmoth.
I mean, I haven't heard anybody say anything pejorative about how he looks. It's just how he is.
It's the eyeliner, I think, that gets people.
It's the guy liner. I mean, come on. Look, there are look, not everybody can rock guy liner. So maybe they're giving you crap because they're just a little bit jealous. That would be.
Yeah, I think so. My girlfriend was actually asking me if I wanted to put some on for the interview. I was like, no, I'm fine. Thank you.
I mean, that's a damn shame. I mean, look, I mean, I was gonna too, but I just didn't have time. But I usually guy liner it up. So what? Then I know that you got back into art. So then, how did that go into what you're doing today? Are you doing artwork as well today? Is that part of something that you're doing for work?
Yep. Yeah, I work as a freelance illustrator. Right now, I'm actually working on a video game project with an indie company. So that's exciting. It's kind of a different pace of work doing video game art because there's the pipeline is a little more intense, I guess. So like they want to make sure that you have, like when you do like freelance illustration for like tabletop RPGs or something, they usually tell you what they need and when it's due and don't really bug you in between. But like for this company and from others, from what I understand, it's very much like we need this, we need it done like on this sort of by this time, and then there's like checkups in between. Like they want to know like, hey, are you running into any problems? Do you need any more information? How's the art looking? Because they like to tailor stuff on the fly. Like if I am doing like I just did a bunch of character orthographs, which are like front, side, and back of the character, and I do like a bunch of different ones to kind of give them an idea of where where my headspace is on how this character is going to look based on their description in the story, and they'll like one, and then maybe like throughout the week they'll be like, hey, we've decided we're going to change something, go ahead and change this or change that or something like that, because we're altering the story a little bit to fit like this thing a little better or whatever. And so there's like constant communication back and forth. It's very like team oriented. And so if you want to do something with a character but maybe it doesn't translate well in the game engine, or like say like Blizzard characters, for example, are very big on the top and very elaborate, because you see the character from the top down. You don't really see his like feet or legs or whatever. So a lot of the design work is like from their bust. So if they decided they were going to alter the game for whatever reason to like the camera angle of the game that they're building because it like fits some for whatever reason, I don't know, then and they needed that change, then there's going to be that like feedback constantly. It's not like a one and done thing. Like, hey, you told me to go to final on this painting, here's the final, boom, there you go, pay me, right? Like for them it's a little different. There's constant like there's tweaking that's involved with it.
Is it something that you're allowed to talk about yet, or are you still are you not able to?
I am NDA'd out of my mind.
That's good. I mean, that's a good thing. Usually if it's an NDA, that means that there's money involved, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can't really say too much about it. I would get in trouble, but yeah, I'm pretty much.
You cannot speak and you will not speak, and that is how it is.
Pretty much.
Well, what can I say? I mean, yeah, I do expect. I mean, I expect people to to throw their careers away over a YouTube interview, of course. But
Yeah. If I
that
could,
would.
I would totally like talk about it because it is a fun and exciting project for me. So.
Well, when it happens, you can let me know, and I can, we can dish about it then. What what are your favorite ways to play Magic? Are you standard? Or are you commander? What's the deal
So
on
I
that one?
used to be really heavy into the standard competitive scene. I used to do, the Friday night tournaments all the time. I was a blue-white control player back when Theros Return of Ravnica was out. That's the kind of like style I like to play. I know some people are like, oh, this guy. But yeah, that was probably the last cycle that I was really competitive. And from there, I kind of shifted into modern a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I got out of standard was because I felt like, at least at the time, there were like one or two really good decks. You were either mono black or blue white control, and that was it. And I mean, like, there was red, like mono red aggro. There was like mono blue. I mean, there were other decks that were there, like they could shake up a tournament. But really, like if you wanted to play it safe, you played one of those two decks, mono black or blue white control, and it was kind of like that every set. And I get it, like that's just how the game is going to be with the limited access or the limited cards that you have access to, and the way the game is designed. But when I got into modern, I thought, okay, so this is going to open up a lot more for me to experiment with and play with, but it was kind of the same thing. Like there were really like three top decks at the time that you had to play. Otherwise, you were just gonna, have a miserable time in a tournament. And then you ended up in like a lot of mirror matches, and that got boring and stale. And so now I just mostly play Commander. I
Who's
think
your
that's
Who's your favorite commander?
uh so I don't have a favorite commander, but I have my favorite deck. It's like one of my Horcruxes. It's a Storm deck, and Malik is it Paragon is the commander for it. But I don't ever really use him. Like he's just kind of there because he has to be there. And if I don't have anything else to do, I'll cast him. But I love just like slinging spells and building up like storm counters, and then casting like Eye of the Storm and just watching my friends groan and all that. It is a fun
You,
deck though. It's not super competitive, but it is fun.
yeah, I do sense a theme here. The people groaning from your decks. It seems like something that you derive great pleasure from.
Yeah, I mean, I like doing fun and interesting things with decks. And when I can get it to work right, it's miserable for everyone else, like it
Oh
should
no.
be. But when it doesn't, it's just kind of like fun to watch me like kind of fumble around and try to like make something out of nothing.
Are you a Winter Orb person?
Uh,
Uh,
yeah.
how did I know? I don't. I
Yeah.
couldn't. I couldn't tell. When you said like when I watched me go off, it's miserable. I'm like, oh, that reminds me of the time. It was so bad. It was. I mean, it was
Yeah.
literally like I think he took like 15-minute turns. It was just like it's sort of like
I've taken some really long turns before. Like one turn was like 20, 30 minutes. I didn't even realize it because I was like digging.
yeah.
I was really trying to win this game, and I was in a pod with like four other people, and I knew I had the win condition. I just needed to make sure that I pulled the cards out the right way because I was playing with the graveyard, I was playing with the library. I had like 40 cards in my hand, and I was trying to make sure I cast everything just right. Instead of just being like, guys, I have the win con. Can we move on? They really wanted to see how this played out because it was one of the first times I'd played the deck. So I was like really trying to make sure I was doing this right.
Oh, okay, so they were interested to see you do it.
Yeah, and now it's like if I can resolve Eye of the Storm, people just kind of scoop and we move on to the next one. Or if I break out like D20s to start counting mana, they're like, okay, we're just gonna move on.
Yeah, sometimes with my play group, I'm like, guys, we need to actually just do a pre-con night only sometimes because one person builds their deck stronger and then the other person builds the next one stronger, and then all of a sudden you have decks that are in response to other decks, and or like decks we can't play each other. So yeah, it's loads of fun. And I'm curious to know what your favorite. I mean, imagine I have an idea of who your favorite artists are, but what are some of your favorite pieces of art from Magic the Gathering?
Oh man. Shoot, man, there's so many. I think the first card that I saw that I really, really, really liked, um, it's actually hanging up on my wall right now, was Avatar of Woe
Mm-hmm.
and Phage the Untouchable. Like those two, when I first saw them, I was like, dang, that's really cool art. And that's what kind of drew me into the game, was like being able to play with those cards. Nowadays, um, dang, there's just so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't tell you, man. Like
It's so you gave me two examples right there. I know it's like when I asked that, it's like a cascade of just art coming at you, because there are thousands
right.
of
Like, you
brilliant
ever
pieces.
held a garden hose and like just sprayed it in your face with water? Like, that's what it's like.
Yeah, no, I've done that. I did that this morning, just for fun. And I love that my interview questions are being compared to like being. That's awesome.
Yep.
That's
It's like, what's your favorite Magic art? I don't know. Let me just try to figure
too
this out.
much decision paralysis is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
I get that when I'm on Netflix. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah,
I want to watch
exactly.
everything, so I'm going to watch nothing.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to promote? Anything coming up that you can talk about, or is everything nadad into a oblivion?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there isn't really much I can talk about. This is kind of like that period where you start to take on a lot of work and then signing a lot of contracts and NDAs, and by the end of the year, I can finally open my mouth, I think. But yeah, I don't really have anything to promote, honestly. Maybe just my website. Hey, if you like my art, I'm open.
And I will absolutely promote it. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you doing this chat, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Thank you. Thanks for
All right.
reaching out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Wasn't that fun? Former Marine, fitness model, and not afraid to talk about Guyliner? His girlfriend's a lucky lady. But look, I gotta say, he was so personable, I would never even pin him as somebody who plays with Winter Orb. Seriously, that card is responsible for some serious MTG PTSD. And even thinking about it now sends chills up and down my spine, and then my spine up and down again, and I need a... Okay, I'm fine. So that's all for now, and until next time, I got a scoop.